When my daughter was born early, I wrote to my parents, "We're in the NICU. Please keep us in your prayers." Nobody responded. A week later, while eating alone in the hospital cafe, I saw 70 missed calls and a message from Dad. "Please pick up, it's serious." I finally did. And then, I was 19 when I gave birth to my daughter 10 weeks early. Her name is Ava. She weighed barely over 2 pounds and looked more like a porcelain doll than a baby. Her lungs weren't fully developed, and they had to hook her up to machines just to keep her breathing. The doctor said things like, "touch and go," and "the next 48 hours are critical." I didn't sleep. I barely ate. I sat in that stiff vinyl chair next to her incubator for hours, whispering the same things over and over, that I was here, that she wasn't alone. The night she was born, I sent one message. Just one. Not dramatic. No crying emoji or anything. Just a straight line. "We're in the NICU. Please keep us in your prayers." I sent it to my mom, my dad, and my older brother Eric. Then I put my phone away and waited. No one replied. The next morning, I checked my phone, expecting at least something. A "what happened?" or a "we're on our way." Nothing. Not even a heart emoji. I thought maybe they were just in shock or didn't know what to say. But by day 3, I knew what it was. They were ignoring me. A few things probably mattered more to them than their daughter having a preemie in critical condition. That I had dropped out of college, that the father wasn't around, that I hadn't begged to move back in after getting pregnant, that I was making decent money in tech support and somehow surviving without their approval. I guess they thought that meant I didn't need anything else. Thank God for Grandma Jean. She was 80, but still moved around like she was 50, and she showed up the next day with a thermos of soup and a bag of clean clothes. She didn't say much, but she came every day and just sat there next to me while I stared at Ava through the plastic. My only other support was Rachel, my old roommate. She lived 40 minutes away and worked full-time, but she called me every evening like clockwork. Sometimes she even dropped by after work with takeout. I didn't realize how rare that kind of loyalty was until I started paying attention to who wasn't calling. A week passed like that. I barely noticed what day it was. Ava had made it through the worst part and was starting to stabilize. I decided to take 10 minutes to breathe and grabbed a muffin from the cafe downstairs. I hadn't even gotten halfway through it when my phone buzzed violently in my pocket. 70 missed calls, most of them from my dad, 2 from my mom, 1 from Eric. My stomach dropped. I had this brief, absurd moment of hope that maybe they were worried about Ava, that maybe it had finally hit them what was happening. Then I saw the message, "Please pick up, it's serious." My hands were shaking when I called back. My dad answered on the first ring. Then he told me what had happened, or at least what he thought was the emergency. And that's when I realized what my family really was. So, I call him back, heart pounding, thinking something happened to my mom or Eric. Or maybe finally it hit them that Ava was in real danger, that I was alone, that I needed them. He answers, and the first thing he says is, "Do you have 15,000? I didn't speak right away. I remember looking around the hospital cafe, like maybe I was on some hidden camera show. I asked why. He launches into this long, winding explanation about how Eric had invested in some kind of business, a car-flipping venture, and the guy he partnered with ran off with their money. Apparently, my dad co-signed a personal loan for him, and now they were behind on payments. The bank was threatening legal action, and they were afraid they'd lose the house. I just sat there staring at the half-eaten muffin in my hand. No one had come to see me. No one had asked how Ava was doing. They had ignored my texts for a week while I sat next to a premature baby fighting for her life. But now suddenly I was worth talking to because I had a good-paying job and a savings account. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just told him I was in the hospital cafe and I needed to get back upstairs. He said something like, "Just think about it, please. We're desperate." Then he hung up. That night, I didn't sleep again. But this time, it wasn't just because of Ava. I kept replaying it over and over. All the times they brushed me off when I told them I was serious about my future. How they called my job techie customer service like it was a cute hobby. How they treated my pregnancy like a mistake they wanted to distance themselves from. And now suddenly I was supposed to be the family savior. Grandma Jean came the next morning. Same thermos, same quiet presence. I told her everything while we sat in the NICU hallway. She listened without interrupting, then just sighed and said, "They'll learn. It might take a while, but people like that always learn one way or another." Over the next few days, I watched my parents spiral. Missed calls turned into desperate voicemails. Eric even tried texting me, acting like we were suddenly close again. I didn't respond, but I didn't block them either. Not yet. I had a plan. I started moving my money quietly. I didn't want them to know how much I had or where it was. I had no plans of handing over 15 grand to cover my brother's stupidity, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized I'd been propping these people up for years. Little things mostly, helping with bills, fixing their Wi-Fi, teaching them how to use online banking, driving Eric to job interviews when his car broke down. They hadn't even noticed how much they depended on me until I disappeared from their little ecosystem. The silence must have scared them more than Ava's condition did. After 2 weeks in the NICU, Ava was finally moved to a step-down unit. She was getting stronger, gaining weight. I knew we'd be discharged soon, and I had to make a decision. Bring her home to my quiet little one-bedroom apartment or not. That's when Grandma Jean offered to move in for a while. She told me she'd be fine sleeping on the pullout, and I didn't even hesitate. Having her there changed everything. It made the apartment feel like home instead of a bunker. She was the one who taught me how to warm bottles just right, how to swaddle Ava when she got fussy. We laughed a lot during those first weeks, slept very little, but we were a team. Meanwhile, my family's messages turned colder. My dad's last voicemail sounded almost angry, like I owed him something. That's when I decided I wasn't going to just distance myself. I was going to cut them off, completely. Financially at first, then slowly in every other way. The first thing I did was shut down the shared streaming accounts. Nothing dramatic, just changed the passwords and didn't tell anyone. Then I canceled the auto pay on their cell phone bill, which for some reason was still in my name from when I first got a family plan years ago. I never even used that plan anymore. They didn't notice until it was due. Eric texted first, just said, "Weird question. Did the phone bill get canceled?" I didn't respond. 2 days later, my mom left me a voicemail. She said something vague about having noticed some changes and asked if everything was okay. That was rich. By then, Ava was finally home. She was still tiny and needed round-the-clock care, but having her in my arms without wires or machines was something I'll never forget. Grandma Jean was a rock. Every bottle, every diaper, every 3:00 a.m. meltdown, she was right there with me. And through it all, I didn't hear a single word from my dad until the next bill came due. I had a joint account with them, mostly because my dad once claimed it would be useful in emergencies. I hadn't touched it in months, but they sure had. So I pulled everything out. Not a fortune, but enough to sting. I transferred it to an account only I could access, then closed the joint one. That's when the messages started pouring in. Accusations, guilt-tripping. They wanted to know why I was being spiteful, why I was hurting the family. I ignored all of it. Eric went quiet for a while. Then my mom sent me a long email, one of those passive-aggressive ones that tried to sound concerned but was full of blame. She even said, "We understand you're tired and hormonal, but this isn't like you." That part made me laugh out loud. What part wasn't like me? The part where I expected basic decency? The part where I didn't let my family take advantage of me during the worst period of my life? I started tracking every dollar. Not because I was worried about money, I was doing fine, but because I wanted to make sure not 1 cent flowed in their direction again. I set up new accounts, paid off the remainder of my credit cards so no one could use my info. I got ruthless, and it felt good. Rachel came over one night with a bottle of wine and asked me, half joking, if I was cutting them off for good. I said I hadn't decided. I wanted them to feel it first, not just the lack of money, the absence of me. A month went by. Ava got stronger every day. I was finally sleeping again, at least in short bursts, and Grandma Jean started going on short walks around the neighborhood. For the first time in ages, things felt calm. Then, out of nowhere, my mom showed up at my apartment. I almost didn't recognize her. She looked tired, worn down, and desperate. She stood in the hallway holding a manila folder, and the first thing she said was, "We really need to talk." I didn't invite her in. I told her Ava was sleeping and I didn't want to wake her. She held out the folder. It was a stack of medical bills. None of them mine. All of them hers, and my dad's. They'd gotten into some sort of health crisis mess. Something about my dad's blood pressure, a canceled insurance plan, and collections notices. They were drowning. She said they didn't need the full amount, just $15,000. Again, with the 15. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. I just closed the door. Grandma Jean was in the kitchen. She'd heard everything. She just shook her head and told me in her quiet way not to get pulled back in, that it wouldn't fix anything, that they'd just keep taking. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Not because I felt guilty, but because this time I wanted them to owe me. 3 days passed after that hallway encounter. I didn't respond to any messages, didn't return calls. I just sat with it. Ava had started smiling, real smiles, not the reflex kind, and it kept pulling me back to the moment, to what actually mattered. I had everything I needed right here, but the thought still nagged at me. $15,000. It wasn't pocket change, but I had it. I'd been careful. I'd worked hard. I didn't spend recklessly, but it wasn't about whether I could afford it. It was about whether they deserved it. I finally told Grandma Jean what I was thinking. She didn't like it, but she didn't stop me either. She just said, "If you do it, make sure it's on your terms." So I drafted a letter. Nothing emotional, nothing about Ava or how they abandoned me, just a simple agreement. I would give them the money as a loan, not a gift. No interest, repayment optional, but it would be the last time. No more help, no more bailouts, and no expectation of reconnection. I printed it, signed it, then attached the check and mailed it directly to their address. The silence after that was eerie. Not a thank you, not even an acknowledgement. Just nothing, until a week later when my brother posted a picture on Instagram of himself with a brand new gaming console. The caption said something like, "Finally caught a break." I stared at it for a full minute. My blood went cold. That's when I knew it hadn't all gone to medical bills. Or maybe none of it had. I could have called him, could have exploded, but I didn't. Instead, I went into my budgeting app, looked at the final total I'd given them, $15,000 exactly, and created a category called Lessons Learned. I didn't cut them off emotionally this time. I just stopped answering completely. Weeks passed. Grandma Jean and I found a rhythm. We'd have morning coffee while Ava napped, and she'd tell me stories about my mom when she was little, about how stubborn she'd always been, how proud. I could see pieces of it in myself too. The difference was I knew when to let go. Then came Ava's first trip outside the apartment. A short walk, a little sunlight, and right there, as I pushed her stroller through the park, I saw my dad sitting on a bench alone. He didn't see me, but I stood there and watched him for a moment. He looked smaller than I remembered, older, tired. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel anger. I just felt done. That night, I deleted every voicemail, every message I'd saved from them, even the first one from the NICU. I didn't need proof anymore. I had the ending I needed, or at least I thought I did. A few days after seeing my dad in the park, something changed. It started with a letter, not a text, not an email. An actual handwritten letter slid under my apartment door. No return address, no envelope, just folded paper with my name on the front. It was from Eric. He didn't say much, just that he was sorry, that he knew I hated him, that maybe he deserved it. He said he hadn't known the money had come from me. He thought our parents had figured something out or taken a loan. He only found out when he overheard our dad bragging about how June finally stepped up. That line alone almost made me rip the letter in half, but I didn't. I read it twice, then tucked it away in the back of Ava's baby book. The next day, my mom called. I didn't answer. Then she texted, "Can we just come by and see her?" I stared at the message for a while. Then I did something I hadn't done in months. I called Rachel. She listened without interrupting, then said, "You know, you can say no, but also, if you say yes, make sure it's for you and Ava, not them." So I said yes, one visit, an hour. They showed up on a Saturday afternoon. My mom brought a little stuffed giraffe and a bag of groceries, probably a peace offering. My dad didn't say much. He just stood in the corner staring at Ava like he didn't know what to do. She looked up at him from her bouncer, wide-eyed, and he actually smiled, a real one. The visit was awkward, stiff, but they didn't ask for anything. They didn't talk about money or what had happened. My mom just kept staring at Ava like she was trying to memorize her. Before they left, she said, "She's beautiful, and I'm sorry we weren't there." I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. Over the next few weeks, things started to shift fully. They didn't become perfect parents overnight, but they started calling, not to ask for things, just to check in. My mom dropped off frozen meals once. My dad asked if he could come help fix a cabinet door that had come loose. They didn't stay long. They didn't press for anything. And for the first time since I was pregnant, I didn't feel like a problem they had to solve. Still, I didn't let my guard down. I kept my accounts separate. I didn't offer help. I didn't mention how much I had in savings or how work was going. I kept my boundaries like walls. But I let them see Ava because she deserved a family, even if it was a broken one trying to tape itself back together. One night, after a particularly quiet visit, my dad pulled me aside before leaving. He looked uncomfortable, like the words physically hurt to say. "We failed you, June." That was it. No excuses, no justifications, just that. I didn't say I forgave him. I didn't know if I did, but I let him hold her for the first time that night, and that was enough for now. It was subtle at first, but something began to settle after that night. They started visiting more regularly, once a week at first, then twice. No drama, no backhanded comments or quiet judgments like before. Just my parents sitting on the couch, awkwardly but consistently, trying to exist in this new version of our lives. My mom took to Ava quickly. She'd bring little outfits, most of them slightly the wrong size, but she meant well. She started texting me photos of clothes she saw in stores, asking if Ava needed anything. It was weird, like she was learning how to be a mom for the first time. My dad was slower. He'd sit in the armchair with his arms crossed for most of the visit, only softening when Ava made some noise or grabbed his finger. He didn't talk much, but he showed up, every time. Eric even came once alone. He brought a second-hand picture book and sat cross-legged on the floor, flipping through it with Ava like he actually wanted to be there. Before he left, he said, "Thanks for not throwing the letter back in my face." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. We both knew what it meant. Rachel noticed the shift, too. She came over one evening holding Ava while I cleaned bottles and said, "So, what's going on with your family? Did they get body snatched?" We laughed about it, but the truth was I didn't have an answer. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe they realized they pushed too far. Maybe they were just getting old and afraid of being alone. Or maybe, just maybe, Ava had become the one thing powerful enough to make them look past their own egos. But I still kept the walls up. I let them come over, but they didn't get access to my accounts. I shared pictures of Ava, not details of my bank balance. I never asked for anything, and I never offered either. One evening, my mom stayed after my dad left. Ava had just fallen asleep, and we sat in the kitchen drinking tea. She looked tired, not just physically, but deep in her bones, and said, "I still remember your text from the hospital. I read it 3 times and didn't know what to do. I thought if I ignored it, it would be less real." I didn't respond right away. I just let the silence stretch. Then I said, "It was real the whole time." She nodded. "I know. I just didn't want to face what a terrible mother I'd been." There was nothing satisfying about hearing that. No rush of vindication, just quiet acknowledgement of what I already knew. Still, it was something. That night after she left, Grandma Jean came into the kitchen and hugged me for a long time. She didn't say anything, just held on like she'd been waiting for me to exhale. By the time Ava turned 6 months, things had shifted into a rhythm I never expected. My parents visited twice a week, sometimes more. They never asked for money again. They brought diapers, small things, whatever they could manage. Eric came by occasionally. He even fixed a leaky faucet without me asking. I wouldn't call it a good relationship, but it was functional, peaceful. I no longer felt like I owed them anything, and for once they weren't asking. The revenge had already happened. Not in some big explosive way, but in the quiet fact that they came back when they needed me and stayed when I didn't need them anymore. Now they were showing up for Ava. And in some twisted way, that was the most satisfying revenge of all, turning the daughter they once ignored into the one person they couldn't afford to lose.